Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 231 here, back in Daytale, tying off Amagami Sister, chapter number 190. This chapter is titled, Tying the Skies Together, Morning. And quickly, let me just say, at the point I'm recording this video, Tying Off Amagami Sister has already ended. It ended 2 days ago. I'm recording this on Thursday, the 28th of August. Is that how months work? Yes, 8/28 of 2025. That's how this works. And Amagami Sister actually ended 2 days ago at the time of recording this. I know there's been some Amagami Sister videos on the channel, but I recorded all of those, the last 3 that have been uploaded, all in a large batch altogether, and that's why I sort of was able to get them all out on time, right? But sort of is what it is there. But today, honestly, I was a little apprehensive going into the final chapter of the Asahi arc, but man, or the first chapter of the final 2 chapters of the Asahi arc, or the Asahi route, whatever you want to say. I sort of now realize the more I talk, the more my words are starting to get minced up, but whatever, that's sort of how it goes. And I sort of opened up this chapter, and the first thing I read was, oh, California, USA, where we see Asahi being sad. And as much as I sort of wanted to come into this chapter expecting not to have a good time, being that throughout the entire series of Amagami Sister, Asahi has always been my least favorite character, for the main point of, oh man, she is like 14 or something really weird like that. And that also just always made me feel a little bit weird. But sort of in this chapter, we see Asahi going off into college and just experiencing that sort of life. And we see Uryu come help her out. And honestly, this is just one of my probably favorite Asahi chapters, not only because it ends off her story, but it also is just a really fun chapter through and through. There's so many funny random things, like a police officer that holds Uryu down and all this other various stuff. But before we can talk about this chapter, let's just like briefly talk about what happened last chapter. And even though they are not related in the slightest, last chapter was a chapter all about Yahei's final moments in the Amagami Sister, as we pretty much understand, like, hey, her and Uryu had their own wedding, and this whole idea of this about walking down the memories that have been made in the past. I would have named that video Walking Down Memory Lane, except I had already done that with the last Asahi chapter I covered. It was 180, and the whole idea of like, oh yeah, this chapter was all about Asahi jogging down memory lane, and I'm like, you know what, I probably shouldn't use that video title twice, but it would be funny if I did, right? But going into this chapter right here, as I mentioned, we see the Cord of Fate running over the top of the page, as you just cut over to California, USA. As I didn't know that Asahi was going to California, but I guess it sort of makes sense, like, hey, it's sort of the closest place to Japan on the mainland of America. I guess maybe you could say Alaska, but like I don't see Asahi going up to Alaska to do all of her marathon running there pretty much, right? So I will give it to Asahi. This works. But pretty much we just see that Asahi is looking very sad and depressed as she's just sitting on the bench or on the beach and just looking out to the world around her. As we see that she sort of like reaches back into her back pocket. Her hair, of course, has grown to be a little bit longer, now fully coming down to like right under her shoulders and all of this various stuff. Very much like a much more mature look that Asahi has in this chapter. As she takes out this letter and just opens it up and reads it one more time, and she just thinks like, oh man, they dropped me from the program. As you just see, this letter reads, it is a termination of a sponsorship agreement. As we, of course, then cut over to Asahi in the office of her running club at her college, and we just see that her boss pretty much is like, Asahi, you know what this is about, right? Your results from the under-18 division weren't bad, and you worked really hard, and it really showed to everybody. But with your more recent results at the under-20 division, we don't believe there's enough room for us to continue sponsoring you, right? But either way, we'll be praying for your future success. As we see it, this pretty much like, this manager guy, I don't know what else to call him, I'm not really a sports guy, and I don't really know all of the lingo there. He sort of grabs this letter and slides it across the table to Asahi, right? And we see that in the present again, Asahi is just thinking over this moment in her mind, has this letter in her hand, and it's just like all gloomy, sitting down, like she's like, oh man, like what am I doing? Like I need to pull myself together, right? And as all of this is happening, we see that her phone starts to buzz in her pocket, and she pulls it up and is like, oh, hey, who's texting me? As we just see that it's both Yuna and Yahei who have some respective messages to give her, like, hey, how's it going, Asahi? That's what Yuna says. And Yahei's like, hey, your university is on summer break, isn't it, Asahi? And like, hey, if you have some time, both of us would love if we could come visit you, right? And Asahi starts to like type out a message saying like, oh yeah, since we're both on vacation, let's do that. But Asahi just brings up her phone to her face pretty much and just like rests it on top of her forehead. And just like, no, I don't think I can face them like this. At this point, we get the chapter title, Time Disguised Together Morning. I find this a little bit of a funny thing is the whole idea of Yahi's first chapter is titled Night, Asahi's first chapter is titled Morning, which really believes me that Yuna's first of her 2 final chapters are going to be called Afternoon, which is a pretty funny thing, but I guess I never put all of that together of like when their arcs sort of like in how their character traits were, like, hey, Asahi is the morning, Yuna is the afternoon, and Yahe is the night. I never sort of put that together, but it's a little bit of a fun thing, right? But as we get this chapter title, we now sort of see that Asahi is sitting here, sort of really feeling sorry for herself about this entire situation. As all of a sudden from behind her, this cop guy is like, hey, you in the sunglasses there, what you doing hovering behind that girl, huh? Let me see some of your ID, pretty much, right? And this guy's like, no, you've got it all wrong, like, I'm sorry, right? As Asahi looks behind her and just sees this cop holding down Uryu on the ground. And, like, this guy is, like, your total, like, fictional, like, really buff cop. Like, he's got this, like, this obviously blonde hair, and it's just, like, sitting here. It's all shaved down. He's got all these sunglasses on. He's this big guy, pretty much, and he's, like, holding Uryu down to the ground. It's like, yes, Uryu is here. He was the one who was, like, staring over this girl's shoulder a moment ago. And Uryu's like, no, I'm telling you, like, let me go. I'm this girl's boyfriend, right? And as all this happens, Uryu pretty much, like, looks around and says, like, oh, hey there, Asahi. And Asahi's like, Uryu, like, what are you doing here, right? As she pretty much, like, walks over, just like, hey, but, like, what are you doing here in the U.S., pretty much, right? And Uryu's like, well, the thing is, I got a message from your roommate. As eventually the cop just, like, pulls his hands off Uryu's like, oh, my bad, I'm sorry, I'll get out of here in about now. Like, I'm sorry, girl, I didn't mean to, like, take him out, but he was just, like, standing behind you a little weird. I didn't mean to be doing what I was doing, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And pretty much, like, starts to walk away here in the moment, as we now see that Asahi and Uryu head back over to Asahi's apartment, pretty much, or dorm room. I guess it probably looks more like a dorm room, as of course, there is a marker on the door saying both Asahi and Karin. As we see, of course, yes, it makes sense. Asahi went to the States. Karin followed after her because of her complex or whatever she's got going on, pretty much, right? But pretty much, we just see that as they walk in the room, Karin's like, geez, like, now after 5 minutes after I contacted you, you fly to the United States. Like, what a desperate creep, but whatever. I guess you two are official now, so it's whatever, right? And of course, one of my favorite parts of the chapter here is where Asahi's just like, hey, Karin, it's not like you have any room to criticize me. I mean, after all, you're the one who chased me to another country and even got into the same university as I did so we could run together, pretty much, right? And of course, it's the same rivalry they've had throughout the entire series. This Karin's like, hey, in your dreams, Asahi Amagami, I just happen to be studying abroad, and my program happened to be at the same university as you. And Asahi's like, oh, there you go again, right? As I just really do like how Asahi is drawn here. It's a little bit of a nice thing, right? And Uryu in the background is like, yeah, some things never will change, right? But either way, we just see that Asahi's like, but hey, either way, thank you, Karin. Like, you were always looking out for me, and you always are, pretty much, right? And Karin is just like, oh, whatever. I just got sick of seeing that gloomy look on your face. All right, then. And she's like, whatever. I'll just leave the rest to your boyfriend now. And she's like, hey, you two just have some fun. As Karin just walks out of the dorm room, leaving both Uryu and Asahi all alone in there, right? And as this happens, we sort of see that Asahi is standing in front of Uryu. And here in the moment, Asahi's just like looking a little sad and just is seeing sort of Karin walk out here in the moment. But as this happens, Uryu just pretty much reaches around Asahi and just wraps his arms around her neck and just gives her a nice big hug here in the moment. As Uryu's just like, hey, you're such a hard worker, Asahi, and you always put on a show of confidence and push yourself whenever nobody's looking. And even when you're going through tough times, you refuse to complain about it. And I really love all of those things about you. And he's just like, hey, but to be honest, I wish that you'd let down that tough front around me, Asahi. As you just see the Asahi pretty much like reaches up and starts to grab Uryu's arms that are pretty much holding around her neck. And she's like, all right, but only if you spoil me, right? As you see the Asahi and Uryu have now made it back down to the beach where they sort of met earlier and are walking down the beach hand in hand. And we see that Asahi is like, hey, thank you, Uryu. I'm super glad that you came to see me. But she's like, hey, but do you be promised not to be mad at me if I tell you the truth? And like, I really didn't want you to see me acting so pathetic like I am right now. And Uryu's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't think you're pathetic at all, Asahi. And honestly, I'd feel the same way if I was in your shoes. And beside, when your girlfriend is having a bad time, isn't it a boyfriend's job to come running? And she's just like, oh, what a smooth talker. Like, you're trying to gun for Boyfriend of the Year award or something like that, right? But either way, they make it down to a nice little spot to watch the ocean waves and also just sit down and have a nice private conversation. As we see that Asahi pulls out the letter of termination that, of course, she got from her team's manager and hands it over to Uryu. And she's pretty much just letting Uryu read it. And she's like, hey, as you can see, I got dropped from the club team, which means I've got no chance of being selected for the Olympic team this year either. And like, hey, when I was a kid, I always overcame every single wall with hard work and harder work every single day. But now I'm coming to realize that the adult world doesn't always work that same way it did whenever we were children. But just some things don't work out. As we see that as Uryu is just reading more of this letter, Asahi just comes over and just starts to lean on Uryu, putting her arms around him, as she's just like, and just starts to cry. And she's like, hey, I'm sorry, I know I'm not super fun to be around right now, but I'm just so frustrated. As we just see tears start to fall from Asahi's face, as she's like, hey, I just don't want to give up on all of my dreams. As of course, Uryu remembers back to all of these various times when he and Asahi spent moments together. And of course, whenever Asahi was like, hey, I'm going to take the gold medal at the women's marathon at the Olympics, like all of these proclamations whenever she was a child. And Uryu's just like, hey, and that's exactly what makes people want to cheer you on, Asahi. And that's the reason everybody is resting their hopes on you. And Asahi's like, what do you mean, Uryu? And Uryu's like, hey, did you read the letter that your club manager gave you all the way to the end? As you just see all the way on the bottom of the letter, we've seen there's been 2 pages the entire time. I guess Asahi was just so freaked out she just didn't read any of it, just feeling bad for herself. I'm sorry, this is a little funny, all things considered, but we just see there's a note that is a letter of recommendation, as it just reads like, hey, dear Asahi, please don't think this letter as a rejection, but as a wake-up call. I've included a letter of recommendation to a certain colleague's club team. If you're not ready to give up on your dream, please give them a chance. I'll continue to pray for your success. As, oh my gosh, look, that's so cool. There's a letter of recommendation that Asahi has been given, right? And Uryu just sort of now gets up right in Asahi's face and just is like, hey, Asahi, even if things don't go well all the time, you always keep moving forward. And that's what I love about you so much. I'll always be here supporting your dreams, Asahi. And Asahi's like, oh, Uryu, right? And Uryu just is like, hey, and one day, Asahi, I know that you're going to debut at the Olympics, win that gold medal, and become the #1 name in track and field worldwide. And when that time comes, let us get married, Asahi. And of course, her face becomes instantly flushed, like, well, what are you talking about, right? And she's like, what? And sort of backs up away from Uryu. And she's like, is this really a time to be proposing to me? Making an Olympic gold medal at the competition? And she's like, is this really the time for you to be proposing to me, right? And she's like, and also the whole idea of making Olympic gold medal and that's the condition for us to get married, pretty much? And Uryu's like, but isn't that your dream, Asahi? And he's like, hey, don't you think the best time to get married is after and once you've made your dream come true? As of course, we remember 10 chapters ago whenever Asahi had that big final chapter, as she says hey, one day I'll become the greatest woman in the world and come back for you. And Uryu just remembers this, and of course both of them remember this, and Asahi sort of remembers it more, and just cracks a little bit of a smile and just is like, hey, it's easier said than done, you know. The Olympics only happen every 4 years, and if I slack off too much, we'll miss our chance to marry young. So hey, if you insist, I guess that just means I'll have to win the next one. As you get this full page spread of Asahi just being very mature here in a moment, just being like, hey, I guess we'll have to do that so we 2 of us can get married, pretty much, right? As eventually, Uryu's like, yeah, I'm sure with that attitude, I'm sure you will win, pretty much, right? And as this happens, Asahi starts to, like, step up and start running down the beach. She's like, all right, with all that settled, I might as well get back to my marathon training. Let's go, Uryu. And I love how Uryu's just, like, still sitting on a bench, like, oh, hold up, Asahi. Like, you don't have to make it even harder for me to chase after you now. Like, do you? And that's where we end this chapter. Chapter number, what was this? 190 of Tying Off an Amagami Sister. Of course, this chapter is titled Tying the Skies Together, Morning. And man, like I mentioned earlier, I was expecting to come into this chapter and sort of just be like, oh yeah, that's sort of interesting. I don't particularly fully care all of the details. Like, it's one of those where I find it interesting, but at the same time, I'm not the biggest fan of waiting for Asahi chapters to come. But just sitting down and reading this chapter, it honestly is so much of a fun one. Going from the whole idea of, oh man, Asahi has been terminated, but of course to come and cheer her up is Uryu, who has been called by Karin, of course, her best friend, that even though she's got this very tsundere personality and like, oh, I don't want to admit that we're actually good friends all this various time, it's one of these nice things to where as well, Karin also has Asahi's best interest in mind and will go and make sure to help her out whenever she needs it, and that's just a really nice thing. And of course, eventually Uryu being like, hey, just open up your feelings. I mean, let's talk about all of this because I've got a dream and the two of us want to share this dream together pretty much, right? As it's in this whole idea of like, hey, did you read the letter all the way through? Asahi, of course, has had this issue where whenever she feels down, she doesn't go through and take a big look at all the ideas going on. It was really fun to be like, oh, wait a second, like, there's actually a chance for Asahi and that she shouldn't be just feeling all super bad about this to herself. It's honestly a really good moment, in my opinion. And eventually, like, hey, give this other team a chance, and eventually the whole idea of, like, hey, let's get married, let this be the goal that spurs the two of us to become better people. It's a really nice thing at the end of the day, and as much as I always talk about Amagami Sister having weird Asahi chapters, this was just a really good one, and I really enjoyed this first part of Asahi's arc, right? Of course, next time, I'm guessing that we're going to be cutting forward in time a great deal. Of course, with sort of Uryu and Yahe's thing, it's sort of like maybe it was a few months at most, like, but this sort of feels like, oh man, we're going to cut to like the next Olympics 2 or 3 years, or maybe even 4 years in the future. We don't really know what Amagami Sister's timeline is. We probably do, but I don't feel like it's, I'm pretty sure this manga started in like, what, 2021? It ran for about 4 years, and we're halfway through 25, so probably started in 21 somewhere. So if we just think like, oh man, the story started then, Asahi was 14 at that time, now she's like 18 to 19. I'm guessing that like the Olympic is going to be in 2028 most likely, so it's going to be a few years for Asahi to actually get there, right? I'm guessing we're going to cut to that point in time and be like, oh man, she wins, and of course the whole thing being, hey, Uryu and Asahi have now been wed, look at that, that's pretty cool, and that's where we'll end next chapter. But yeah, I actually have 3 minutes, so I need to be out of the room and be to a class, so I recorded this video a bit too long, but it sort of is what it is there. But either way, if you guys did enjoy this video and Tying Off an Amagami Sister chapter number 190, I've been covering this series since the beginning of the final arc, of course, the Tying the Skies Together arc, to start at chapter number 176. So I've got videos from that chapter all the way to this one right here. And like I said, I know that this series has been ended for about 2 days at recording of this video, but my goal is to pretty much have all of the videos out by the week anniversary of the series ending. So there's 4 more chapters after this, of course, the second Asahi chapter, the 2 unit chapters, and whatever the final chapter is. I've not read any of those 4 chapters yet, but sort of is what it is there. But there'll be a post of all of the Amagami Sister videos in the description box of this video, along with the end card of this video. If you want to go to my YouTube channel at Glowplasma and hit the follow button, subscribe, do whatever you need to do, that'd be pretty neat. It lets me guys know that, like, hey, you guys are enjoying the content I am creating, even if it is a few weeks/days late, or in some cases even months. But I don't want to talk about that, you know what I'm saying? But either way, if all that way, I'll catch you guys next time for Tying Off an Amagami Sister, chapter number 191. Again, this chapter was titled chapter number 190, not Tying the Skies Together, Morning, and I'll catch you guys next time for that chapter. Until then, this will be Glowplasma 231, signing out. I know I normally say that Yuna is the best girl, but Asahi, she had a pretty good showing in this chapter. It was good. So I'll catch you guys next time. This will be Glowplasma, signing